room and turned off. Welcome everybody to this afternoon's meeting of the Value of the Sun Deconstruction and Reuse Work Group. We appreciate your joining us. Today we have a number of speakers. They are all part of Reclaim NYC, which is the Reuse Exploratory Committee on Legislative Acts Impacting Materials. It's a multidisciplinary and multi-sectoral all-volunteer group that is focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions from construction and demolition waste, supporting material reuse, establishing resilient local supply chains, and creating local jobs. And they were founded in 2001. Today, we're going to be hearing from 6 of their participants: Magdalena Zink, Alyssa Westervelt, Luna Oiwa, Allison Arlotta, Julie Fuchs, and Kelly Tigera. Before we turn things over to our speakers to begin their materials, and as people arrive and settle in, we want to set just a little bit of context for folks who may not be familiar with our meetings. What's the Valley of the Sun Deconstruction and Reuse Work Group, which is this god-awful acronym? We're based in the Phoenix, Arizona metropolitan area, but we welcome participants anywhere. We're in our 6th year of spotlighting deconstruction, reuse, and sustainability progress plans and goals as models for broader awareness and implementation. We invite you to join us on LinkedIn to share and promote your efforts, and we also ask you to email us with suggestions or questions, or if you'd like to present in one of our sessions. I will paste a link in just a few minutes into the chat where you can find out more about us and find those links for those. The meetings are sponsored by Stardust, and Stardust is a charitable organization in the Phoenix area since 1997. It extends the life of quality materials and enriches our community and protects our planet. Since 1997, Stardust has completed over 9,700 deconstruction jobs in the Phoenix area, diverted over 100 million pounds of usable materials from the landfill, and put those reclaimed materials back to use in our community through 2 retail centers, serving more than 200,000 individuals and families. In addition, since 2012, Stardust has provided over $200 million of new household items to the community through our Gifts in Kind program. After today's meeting, we will be taking our now usual summer break, so there's no meeting in July or August. We will be back on Monday, September 14th, and we will, of course, put registration links out for all of that beforehand. As always, we want to understand and learn more about you. This is a community. We encourage you to get to know and connect with each other. So please take a minute, introduce yourself and your organization in the chat, because you might discover somebody you want to have a follow-up conversation or connection with. As you do that, we are going to conduct 2 polls to learn. First, what part of the country or world you're located in or focused on. And second, what organizations or sectors you represent. We've had well over 600 folks attending our meetings so far, but every topic resonates with different interests, so we get different geographies and we get different backgrounds. Lauren, if you could please go ahead and launch the poll. First, it's what geography do you represent or serve? And for this, we'd like you to select one, please.
Thanks, Kathy. Yeah, the poll is live, everybody. I'm sure most of y'all have seen this before. You could just take a couple moments just to share where you're joining from today, and we'll share that out in just a couple moments.
And I'm going to guess, I don't see the polls on my screen share. I'm going to guess that we have a lot of folks from the Northeast today, or a significant portion, because there'll be folks who are aware already.
That is a great guess, and we're sharing those results now. Like you guessed, Northeast region is the #1 answer today. Thanks for everybody for joining us. And we still have a little bit of everyone else joining today as well.
And Lauren, do we have some participants from outside the US? We've been fortunate to get some more remote participants in recent meetings. I'm just curious as to whether we were lucky enough to have that today.
Yeah, it does look like we have a couple today.
Superb. Great. We're glad and we welcome you. Next, we'd like to understand what organizations or sectors you represent. We know you wear multiple hats, many of you. So please go ahead and work that one. And when I get better at pivot tables, we'll start correlating this information so that we can tailor and promote things to folks where things are of greatest interest.
All right, that was very quick this time around. Thank you, everybody. We have those results for everyone to take a look at as well.
Do we have a specific focus, or do we have a pretty broad representation this time, Lauren?
It is pretty broad. It looks
Okay.
like the leader at the moment, though, is local government.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. Now, meeting information. The recording link and the Zoom chat will be made available afterwards to anybody who registered. Our guests do have materials that they've prepared to share, and we've reserved time for Q&A and discussion afterwards. So please, while they're presenting, if you've got thoughts, comments, or questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. We will come back to those when they finish so that we don't lose track of it, but we also don't interrupt their momentum. As much as possible, we want participants to have local control of your microphones and your cameras, so please go ahead and use that as you see fit, especially if we get into the conversation part. We'd love to see you while we're having conversations with you. But do be aware of your background noise, standard Zoom protocol stuff. There is a very brief end of meeting survey. That's an opportunity to give us feedback to help us improve our meetings, but also a place to let us know if you'd like to present at one of our meetings. And we do have a place in that questionnaire to give feedback to our presenters, specific feedback to the folks who are our guests today. So there is a chance to channel things to them as well. Okay, and I'm Kathy Trontel. I'm a member of the Stardust Board, and now I'm going to turn things over to Magdalena, Alyssa, Luna, Allison, Julie, and Kelly. And I believe you guys will be introducing yourselves in a little more detail than that as you each get to your parts of the presentation. Luna, we see your slides. Okay, guys, take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone for joining us. We're really excited to be with the Valley of the Sun Deconstruction Work Group. You know, long time watchers, first time participants. Let's go to the next slide. So we are, like probably everyone on this call, we have formed ourselves around this vision of a world where building materials are valued past their initial use. Obviously to result in less waste, fewer emissions, less air pollution, more personal connection with local history and community, and greater supply chain resilience. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how Reclaim works in New York and some of the specific challenges we face in New York, but also the really exciting and great momentum that we're building. So next slide. So what is now Reclaim began 5 years ago in May 2021, just as we were coming out of the first year of the pandemic. We were a handful of people with different professional backgrounds. My background's in historic preservation. Other people on this call are architects or engineers or sustainability consultants or business owners. And we all had this shared interest and obsession with material reuse. And we used to meet up in bars to share information. It was just it's just a few of us. We talked through our ideas and our frustrations. And from the very beginning, we saw that there was a huge need for advocacy and awareness about the potential of reusing building materials. And we were interested in this topic because it just felt obvious that there should be a better way to do things than the status quo. And there are characteristics of New York that make it especially difficult, I guess, for material reuse, or difficult to imagine material reuse. And there's just so much construction in New York. So the volume is huge in terms of filings, in terms of material. There's a lot. And it's difficult to quantify the construction and demolition waste because waste management is outsourced to private haulers. We don't have municipal construction and demolition waste landfills. And space is obviously very limited and very expensive. And so source separation at construction sites and storage and all those things that are really necessary for facilitating reuse are super difficult to come by. But we felt like in a city as big and influential as New York, there's so much potential for things to change for the better. And if we can do it here, we can do it anywhere. So we should do it here and we should do it everywhere. And we soon found many like-minded friends, and this small ad hoc group outgrew the bars, and we started meeting monthly in office spaces, volunteered by our growing members. As Kathy said, today we are the Reuse Exploratory Committee on Legislative Acts Impacting Materials, Reclaim NYC. We now have over 170 members, and we're a multi-sectoral advocacy group. We're going to talk a little bit about how as a group, we've been doing a lot of different work. We are an all volunteer group, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But we've been connecting with local businesses and organizations, drafting a reuse action plan, speaking with legislators, and building support and momentum around reuse. So I'm going to pass it now to Luna. She's going to share about our reuse action plan, which is one of our big outputs from the past couple of years.
Yeah, so as Allison said, last year we published the Reclaim Action Plan. This action plan highlights 4 main strategies that we are looking to bring to the attention of New York City government. And I will go through each of these strategies in the following slides, but you can also review the strategies at your leisure by downloading the action plan from our website after this call, reclaim-newyorkcity.org. Strategy 1 is generate demand for reclaimed materials, and here we are asking the city to consider implementing a requirement for construction projects in New York City to procure some minimum quantity of at least 1 reclaimed material type. Strategy 2 is facilitate supply of reclaimed materials, and here we are asking the city to consider requiring demolition permit applications to include 1, a salvage assessment, so an assessment of existing material quantities and highest value use, and 2, a materials management plan to outline where materials will likely go after deconstruction or demolition. And we would also like to require compiling this data in a public database, as standardized data will be very helpful as a foundation for the development of future deconstruction and reuse policies and programs. Strategy 3 is connect supply and demand. Here we are asking the city to advance policies to promote tools, organizations, and initiatives that connect salvage goods and reuse opportunities, leveraging existing programs to the extent possible, while also exploring market and technology innovation. And we also ask that the city help identify opportunities for storage and transportation of materials for reuse. And lastly, strategy 4 is promote innovation. And here we are asking the city to establish a grant or incubator for organizations that are working to advance building material reuse in some way. So examples of organizations that could be supported through this type of grant program include organizations that coordinate on-site or local reuse within New York City, salvage, remanufacture, supply, furnish, or install reclaimed materials, provide job training related to working with reclaimed materials and skilled deconstruction, develop a warranty program for reclaimed materials, or establish a product buyback or repair program. And these 4 strategies were really inspired by our discussions in our monthly meetups about what initiatives are bold enough to matter, but low-hanging enough to be feasible here in New York City at this point in time. And the strategies were also inspired by what other cities across the country are already doing when it comes to pushing for building deconstruction and material reuse, and also our conversations with folks in our network who graciously reviewed our draft and recounted their experiences of what works and what is most important to push the envelope. This included folks affiliated with the American Institute of Architects, NYC Economic Development Corporation, New Buildings Institute, New York City's Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice, and many more. And through this presentation, we're also hoping to inspire folks in other cities who may not have networks like Reclaim yet, and maybe even inspire others to draft action plans like ours. So next, I wanted to talk a bit about the behind the scenes work in drafting the action plan. And there isn't one right approach, but in the process of putting together this action plan, we eventually decided on the following: keeping the message simple and focused, sticking with 4 strategies, not being too prescriptive upfront, suggesting that more specific requirements be developed after collecting stakeholder input later down the line. 3, introducing requirements in phases. For example, suggesting that requirements to reuse a certain quantity of materials start out as some low quantity and then increase over time. For providing options for how to narrow the scope of ambitious policies, we did this by suggesting several approaches, including starting with a focus on certain priority materials, limiting school requirements to buildings of a certain age or size, and 5, emphasizing best case scenarios for reuse. So suggesting that projects start by looking into on-site reuse, reuse local to New York City, reuse within a given real estate portfolio, or reuse through purchasing products from businesses that specialize in remanufacturing, for example. And again, this is a volunteer group. Many of us are doing this work outside of our 9-to-5s. And so to draft this action plan, a subset of Reclaim members, including myself, met online in the evenings and worked on the draft during the weekends. And it was definitely challenging to find long stretches of heads down time to integrate the feedback that we were receiving, narrow down the list of potential strategies into a short and cohesive list, and just trying to find the time to write overall. But we got through it and we're really proud of what we put out. Our next step as Reclaim is to develop a coalition to support specific policy proposals based on our action plan and to identify council members who are interested in taking this on. With that, I will pass it on to Alyssa.
Thanks, Luna. I'll take this one. So in addition to the policy and advocacy work and the reuse action plan, we also arrange a lot of site visits, community events, and invite presentations from leaders within the sustainability community in New York, as well as host events. So you can see here in the lower left, we had a meeting with a former city council member, Costa Constantinides, who championed and passed New York City's operational carbon reduction law called Local Law 97. He was a great resource for us to push us in how we thought about implementing a sustainability law in New York. We also visited Materials for the Arts, which is a city-run nonprofit that takes donations from private companies and donates them to the New York City public schools. So already doing creative reuse in the public sector. There's also an art installation by one of our members who was picked for a residency within in the New Museum's prestigious New Ink art program, as well as a site visit to a lighting company that uses wood salvaged within the city in some of their lighting fixtures. Next slide. Alyssa, you want to take this one?
Yeah, so I'm Alyssa Westerveld. I am actually with the City of New York. I work for the Department of Sanitation and run the Reuse and Donations Unit. So we thought it was important, especially now, to really bring in the city into some of the planning and align what Reclaim was doing with the priorities outlined within the city. So 2 of these are the NYC Solid Waste Management Plan, which comes out of the Department of Sanitation. This is a 10-year plan for the city's solid waste citywide, not just what DSNY manages, which is just residential waste. It's mandated by state law, and this is the first plan that was required to have circularity guidelines, waste reduction guidelines, and construction and demolition plans within its scope. It is still in draft, but we are hoping to release the final in 2026. The swamp, as we call it affectionately, came on the heels of our Economic Development Corporation's Clean and Circular Construction Guidelines, which is a document that outlines their goals for all projects that EDC runs, which in New York is actually a pretty substantial amount of real estate and reconstruction projects. So these are sort of the mission. This is what's driving New York City to move forward, and it's really helped having this Reclaim NYC coalition to sort of bring on the ground the business perspective to the city. Next slide. So one thing to know, like when you're within the city, you often have to be very, very careful about looking like you're giving preferential treatment to one industry or one particular company, especially when there's a chance that, you know, they could be a vendor down the road. So the way we've been able to sort of work with that is that Reclaim NYC is sort of the convener of the private sector. It represents the private sector, and Kelly will talk a little bit more about that. And then DSNY obviously represents the city and our priorities. On the heels of the first project under the clean and construction guidelines. It's this project called Spark. You'll hear more about it. It's a huge, massive undertaking. All the contracts were in place before the construction guidelines came out. So it was sort of trying to figure out building the plane as you were flying it, basically. And so there was a lot of questions about process, about how they were actually going to meet their circularity goals. And so Reclaim NYC and myself at DSNY decided to organize a town hall. So we were able to bring together New York Economic Development Corporation, who's running the project, their vendors, people within the reuse industry that were interested in getting involved and interested in access to those materials, with a town hall. And it was really exciting that everyone was interested in having a seat at the table, and open to having this conversation where we would try to clarify who was responsible for what within this pretty complicated setup, clarifying how there was an opportunity to express interest because there was not a traditional procurement method for reused materials, and kickstarted the expression of interest for both fixed materials FF&E and fixed building materials on the on the building, and then the FF&E loose materials that would be remaining in the building after the school moved out. And it was an opportunity for the private sector to ask meaningful questions and have a meaningful conversation with the construction companies, and DSNY acted as sort of a neutral party, and that we found that is great in a lot of different issue areas, is that people tend to play nice. They tend to show up when you are there just bringing people together as the convener.
And I'll just add to that. So I've worked in the private sector in the construction industry for quite a while. And if you worked in the private sector of construction industry, you're probably where it's very difficult to figure out how to engage with the public sector if it's not something that you would do very often. And so in the early phases of Spark, a lot of companies were coming up like unsure of how they could deconstruct or take materials from this project. And there was we all understood the significance of this project, right? The first project the city was going to do under these new guidelines. Both locally and nationally, the construction sector was watching. And if this project succeeded, it would be easier for projects that followed to also succeed. And if it failed, it would become a case study of how it could become a case study of how circularity doesn't work. So, I mean, this was really a great, when this idea came up, we give the city a lot of credit for showing up to listen and engage with a conversation. And our goal with this was to hold the city accountable to their stated goals and make sure it ended up being a success. So really have to give the city credit for showing up and having a conversation. Fortunately, a selection of materials were removed by contractors and reuse businesses. So we're happy to call it a success, but it's also a process that's still ongoing, and the city's figuring out how to do this better on future projects. There's a new one happening right now called Bush Terminal, and hopefully all the other EDC projects going forward will also have a circularity component. Reclaim party. So we held our first party in November 2025 with a few goals. This was our first time to open up to the wider construction and reuse industry in New York. So as an all-volunteer organization, we don't have any formal communication channels. Like we don't have Instagram or anything like that. And so besides our monthly meeting and our Slack channel, this was our way to really invite people in. We wanted to highlight the work of reuse leaders from all sides of the industry. So we had a design build contractor present, a reuse lighting company I mentioned earlier, that was Stick Bulb. a nonprofit, a community college that had a major circularity initiative, and as well as a real estate developer. And it was also part of our goal was to get this on the radar of elected officials and city government to show that this is mainstream and this is very possible and achievable within the construction sector. We had we had a city council member attend as well as a state assembly member's staff member. And I have to say, like, in addition to more formal activities that we've done, the community aspect of it has also been really important. So in a way for people to exchange knowledge, to ask questions, we're all trying to figure this out, to be a resource for each other. And so we got a lot of feedback that it was also just a great party, which I think we also really appreciate in addition to being like informative and helpful in pushing forward our efforts.
And so following the success of that party, there were several initiatives going on within the city sort of circulating around this. Our Department of Design and Construction has a town and gown unit, which really focuses in on leveraging the universities in the city to do targeted research. And in the past several years, there has been an increased focus on reuse in that research. They do events to present that research, but they're pretty small. They have sort of limited capacity. Then Batworks, which is an EDC property that is now being run by LA Clean Tech Incubator to become an incubator for well, I guess it remains to be seen, but we're trying to push them to use that space as an incubator for construction innovation. So between the work that we were doing at DSNY and our priorities aligned with the swamp, Reclaim NYC, the Department of Design and Construction, EDC, and the Batworks team, we put together an all-day summit to sort of tackle each of these issues, really showcase that there is this momentum. There is actually a business case. People have businesses that are growing with reuse. So we have an interactive expo and exhibit. We had case studies. We had vendors showing off their businesses. It ended up being about 200 people and a really good mix of policymakers, industry leaders, researchers, advocates, and designers and entrepreneurs. We kind of went through what's currently happening. So with the research, where like what we understand the landscape to be, what the goals of New York City are through the two documents I mentioned, and also we have an executive order to lower embodied carbon in the building sector, and reuse was not specified in that executive order, but it became very clear that reuse was going to be a vital component to reducing embodied carbon. So our mayor's office of environment and climate and environmental justice, so many acronyms, were there speaking, and we also have updated our industrial plan with a focus on how do we leverage our industrial areas for circularity. And then we had the Batworks team do a really interactive session to kind of understand what the scope of their work is going to look like when it is officially operational in 2028, and discuss with actual practitioners what they would need from the space in order to really bolster it. So it was a really exciting, fun day to see everyone talking. In this picture is our DSNY's Commissioner Gregory Anderson. So feeling like we have full buy-in from the city and support was really amazing to bring everybody together. Next slide.
And just as you swap, it's just about half past.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the state collaboration that we have with Crowd. They're one of our strongest collaborators, and Crowd stands for Circularity, Reuse, and Zero Waste Development. They work across New York State, and they address building materials waste through research, education, policy, design, and workforce development. And Crowd has members across many towns and cities across the state, and a lot of our Reclaim members participate in Crowd as well. Next slide. So this is a lot of text, but just want to mention that this past session, there were a few reuse-related bills that were proposed at the state Senate and Assembly. And Crowd worked very closely with the co-sponsors of these bills to think of kind of iterate on the ideas and also help draft the bills. The first one I'll mention is set standards for wood reuse, and this requires a grading program to be developed for the reuse of wood. And we're really excited because this bill actually passed about a week and a half ago in both houses. So that's great. And now the governor just has to sign it. The second one establishes a grant program for projects that are doing deconstruction and contractor certifications for deconstruction. And the third aims to reduce embodied carbon through 3 pathways. So those are some of the things that are going on at the state level in the legislation. Next slide. So what Reclaim has been able to do is really be a big supporter of these bills. We met with the co-sponsor of these bills, Assemblymember Anna Callis, at our January meeting. We were able to provide feedback on the bills and also show our support for her work. We also were able to mobilize and collect signatures very quickly from both businesses and sign a letter of support, and then also give that to individuals for them to sign and send to their legislators in February. And then in April, members of Reclaim attended a legislative advocacy day in Albany that Crowd had organized. And we spoke with 10 of the legislators there and answered any questions they had about the bills and tried to get them in support of these bills, which they were, which is great. And that's it on the state side. I'll pass it back to Alyssa, I believe.
Yeah, so you'll probably heard us mention the Spark project, which is the city's first circular construction park project. It is a former nursing school that they're going to turn into a huge research campus. So Science Park and Research Campus is the acronym for Spark. It's in Kips Bay on the way west side of Manhattan. Next slide, please. During the town hall, what was identified was not only that there was building material, but that there was a ton of furniture. So there was 700 dorm rooms worth of furniture. There were academic spaces, there was athletic spaces, all with material that would normally just go to landfill. So they worked with my team at the donation and reuse unit to sort of inventory all the materials that are available, take photos, post them online, and share them with our community. We hosted a ton of site visits for people to see what the material looks like. And some of the most common items that were of interest were air conditioners, the dorm furniture, some of the athletic and rec room equipment, any electronics like this TV, and then each floor had its own kitchen, so there was stoves and refrigerators that were in good working order. So there was quite a bit of interest in these items. Next slide. And it really, there were some really beautiful case studies that came out of it. So the pictures here are from Repurposed Life. They rented vans on the weekend. They were able to pick up dorm furniture. You can see the picture on the right is them moving one of those big wardrobes. On the bottom is all of the mattresses, people collecting mattresses. And you can see the picture on the bottom right is the final children's room after it was all set up with the dorm furniture. So really meaningful work here that they were able to do. Another example is Playground NYC. It's this really fun adventure playground, kids only, where they just have materials out and kids get to do whatever they want with them. So our partner there was able to take a bunch of the athletic equipment, all of those mats for kids to jump off of high, scary heights from, Big Reuse is one of our big reuse centers, so they did a lot of work helping to move things to their reuse center. City Harvest is our big food rescue organization, so they were able to pick up some of the stoves and fridges, there's some microwaves, and redistribute it to their agency partners, so food pantries that could use better equipment. And then most recently, we've been moving air conditioners with the help of Department of Health and Big Reuse so that they can go to shelters and cooling centers around the city. So all of this really has direct impact on the city. Not only is there the environmental benefit, but real social, like real visible, immediate social benefit. And then next slide. So all in all, this is not quite right because there's I think about 90 other air conditioners that got moved on Friday, but about 80,000 pounds of material. And that has the environmental impact of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 73 metric tons, or like taking, what is this? Oh yeah, 15, almost 16 vehicles off the road for a year. So, again, not just the environmental impact of reuse, but also the real world social benefit. And then I think I'm passing this off to Julie.
Hi, sorry about that. I was having trouble with my unmute. I'm Julie Fuchs, and I work at Co-Adaptive in Brooklyn, and we are a design, build, and deconstruction company. And we worked on the deconstruction at Spark, and I'm going to talk through some of the stuff we took out of the building. This is a view of Spark from the East River that we just passed, which I love that image. You can go on to the next one, Luna. We had done a few site visits before the town hall meeting, but the town hall meeting really clarified things enough for us that we were able to commit to some being able to take some material out. It was just a really important step in the process for us to be able to ask questions and get more clear answers about what was happening. So after the town hall meeting, we decided to take out ceramic glazed block, which you can see in these next couple of pictures. You can go on to the next one, Luna. It was all over the buildings in this kind of tan color, and then also a green color that you can see on the left side of this slide. On the right side of this slide is a current new product that is made in Texas. We ended up selling the block for a little bit under, about $7 under what the new blocks are made. Next slide is a video of some of our crew pulling out some of the block.
You'll hear it. I might have to reshare.
I can hear it.
It's sharing with sound. You might turn it up a little bit, Luna.
Okay.
Next slide, Luna. So just a few more images of us cleaning and palletizing the material. You can go next, Luna. And next. And next too, yeah. We also removed this wood paneling from the auditoriums, the school auditoriums. We removed the slatted maple paneling, which ran floor to ceiling. It was about between 14 and 20 feet long and 32, 36 and 42 inches wide. Um, and we sadly we weren't able to save the domed paneling that you can see between those slatted panels. We also had to remove the perimeter of the seating around in the auditorium just to access all that paneling. So the seating was in really good condition. We ended up getting 2 connections with MFTA, which is the Materials for the Arts. We were able to donate about over 200 seats to different theaters in Manhattan. And the wood paneling, with the help of Kelly's wonderful platform, was sold before the panels came out of the building. And they went directly into 4 different music venues in Manhattan and Brooklyn. Next slide, Luna. Here's some just pictures of us when we were doing probing in August before we started in February of this year. And you can see the detail of how the panels were attached at the bottom of the floor. Next panel. So here's a little bit of the crazy in between time. Next slide. And removing them. Next slide. And cleaning and then moving them into their new spaces. We also removed some lighting for a partner at Reclaim Stick Bulb Lighting Company, and these are the sconces that lit the aisles in the auditorium, and Stick Bulb took those, as well as many other lights in the main parts of the building. I don't have any images of that, but I will put their website in the chat. They're just doing wonderful work with the lighting that's coming out, and they have a new company that's called BTN, or Better Than New, that will be fully up pretty soon, where they're just doing reused, reclaimed lighting that they refurbish. So in all, in about a month, we took out more than 10,000 pounds of ceramic block, about 2,500 square feet of wood paneling, and over 200 auditorium seats. So I'll pass it on to our closing remarks, I guess.
Yes. Okay. So we've covered a lot of different things. And so for everything that we've described today, we've done that as this loose affinity organization, just volunteers, not a formal 501c3 at all. And so there's been good aspects of this. It's allowed us to be really nimble and to act very quickly. There's basically no money involved in anything that we do. And we can like operate, just we can move quickly. But now we're really looking into how we can grow our impact. And to do that, we think we need to raise money, and we think we need to have more dedicated manpower, people power behind our work. And so we're exploring ways to formalize, whether that's as our own 501c3 or joining up with an existing one, most likely probably going down that route. But if you have any ideas or suggestions on that or have done that before, we would love to hear about it. But there's going to be more from us. I guess that is all to say there's going to be more from us in the next few months about how we're developing. But we wanted to get our next sort of big event on everyone's radar. In case you happen to be coming to New York for the Greenbuild Conference in October, we're going to be hosting a party during the conference. And so if you want to stay updated about what we're planning, you can scan this code and we'll email you when the date and time is set. But yeah, with that, thank you so much for attending, and we'd love to hear any of your questions or thoughts. on the work we've been doing.
And I know we want to leave this screen up for a moment for folks to scan the quick read code. Oh my goodness. I think the first person to put comments and a question into the chat is Melissa Wenzel. So Melissa, please go ahead and unmute yourself and we're going to have you start. But this, I'm stunned. I had an understanding, but the scope and the scale of what you guys have achieved with an all volunteer group is mind boggling. Melissa, I hope I didn't in any way steal your thunder and that you'll go ahead and make some comments and also ask your question.
I remember when this group got started and, putting out the feelers of who's doing what across the nation to take all that information and just expand upon it fivefold, tenfold. I don't know what, it's amazing what it's not surprising, but still amazing what a dedicated group of people can actually accomplish these days. So you give me examples that I can bring to my management at our environmental agency and potential bills that I might consider crafting. It's a really tough time in Minnesota because we do have an exactly divided House and Senate. But that doesn't mean we ever give up. So you give me hope more than anything else that you can accomplish what you go after for a more sustainable built environment, and that ripple effect of supporting others doing the same thing is just going to be part of that equation. So I don't know. I'm just amazed. Thank you all for this. Thanks for leading by example.
Absolutely. And Melissa, you had a question about how much funding would potentially be available for the built environment grants.
Yeah. Yep, looks like there was an answer of not sure exactly the dollar amount, but
okay,
big enough to make it a challenge to pass. And I certainly do understand that we received funding once for more sustainable built environment initiatives, and only once at this point, though we do have an open environmental assistance grant where built environment proposals are accepted. So that's kind of how we're kind of sneaking in and doing these things. I have to say that in Minnesota, we've been funding a lot of for recycling market developments in our Greater Minnesota grants. There's been a lot of county-run diversion reuse programs. We have over 20 of them now that are either in the works or have been finalized, and that seems to be really driving change here in Minnesota.
I just dug up an old email that had the amount when we sent the letters of support. It was 18 million requested.
Yeah, it was
it's still nothing compared to other industries or, what the private sector does, but for a grant program, that's fantastic if funded, or even a fraction of that, still a good place to start.
Hopefully next session, it works out.
Yeah, I have a feeling that the legislative makeup across the nation is going to change a bit by state next year.
Melissa, I want to say you're the one who leads by example, and we're all following you.
I second that.
Does take a village. Josie Colin, you have your hand up, and why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. Thank you all. This was super interesting. I had a few questions specifically about the party and the summit you hosted, and being that you weren't an official organization, like how you got the word out to all those people, and with like a specific interest in how you got policymakers to attend. And then I kind of had a follow-up question about how your work with bills went, but wondering how you got the word out and then getting the policymakers there.
I'm laughing because so Alyssa really led the outreach for the CD Reuse Summit, and then I led it with another person on the party. And I think we really there are a couple like community groups within New York, and we basically like shared it with every single community group, and it was very manual. And like I was calling city council members like repeatedly to get them to show up. And so I learned a lot about what it means to do outreach. And I think for our next party, we're going to have a committee doing it. It won't just be me like badgering our city officials, but that it was pretty manual as we get this off the ground. And I think that's kind of like how we've been operating, like pretty scrappy. Most of us do not have a formal policy background. We have a couple people, and that's been really helpful, but like most of us are learning as we're doing it.
Wow. And for the summit, like we with the New York City Economic Development corporation. They have their own legislation team, so they handle the outreach for that, for getting elected officials in the door. And then the rest, we just, there were so many organizers. That we just used all of our individual networks to do outreach. It was very targeted to industry folks, so there was no real marketing. It was just newsletters and things like that.
Yeah, and I'll just expand on what Alyssa said there with like, and the way our organization has grown is like because we don't have formal like communication channels, like we don't have a newsletter, we don't have a like Instagram or any other social media accounts. It's really like community by invitation. So like people go to an event, and most of us have been invited by someone else who was already in. So we're not exclusive. It's just that like it's sort of grown with intention, because we don't have a full-time staff member to manage like outreach and onboarding. It's really just been pretty organic in that way. But it has been really successful and built a community of interested people pretty effectively.
I think one of the other things about the party that made it a draw for people to come was that it was hosted at Stickbulb, which is the lighting company that Julie was talking about, who have this really amazing, beautiful showroom space. And they are an example of like the kind of business that it exists within reuse. And so it was, I think, enticing to get people, like especially, people who are interested in craft and materials, are like, "Ooh, I want to see that showroom."
Very cool. Yeah, this is really helpful. And then I was curious more about your work with Crowd and the bill sponsors and drafting of those bills. Was that mainly something something I'm assuming that's already in the works with, like there are just bills like that going around already, and Crowd kind of helped to create advocacy days around enhancing those bills? Or if I could understand a little bit more about that process.
So I think um, Crowd is like some of the main organizers in Crowd is based in Ithaca, and that one of the co-sponsors of these bills is from Ithaca. Anna Callis is the Ithaca Assembly member. So I think they just had ongoing conversation while she was working on those bills, and because there's a strong like research background with the Cornell Circular Construction Lab, they had a lot of good communication there with Anna Kellis to make sure those made sense. And I do think there was some kind of I think there was some back and forth between them during that period. Um, but there was also like other co-sponsors of the bills that were involved from other districts. So I don't know if anyone else has any more to say on that.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Josie, where are you based?
Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona. Yeah, and so we don't really even see bills like that come up very often, I don't think. Like there's some with like accessory dwelling units sort of thing has been about the closest. So yeah, I was kind of asking that for like how would we go about getting that momentum going if there wasn't already one in the pipeline sort of thing.
Yeah, I think what Crowd has been doing in Ithaca is like very helpful for us
Yeah.
because it's so hard to mobilize, like things in New York City. There's just so many people, but they have such a really dedicated, and like they have the university, Cornell University, and they can kind of build on like the school knowledge and like the local activists and then because they have access to their council, their representatives in that way, they can kind of bring it to the state level. So it helped us. Their activities helped us.
Thank you.
Josie, it's wonderful to be learning about you in the Phoenix area, because the more all of this started to try and we knew it would be a long haul, but to increase awareness and build support and collaboration here, because we don't have some of the same drivers that exist in more densely populated urban environments. There's still enough open space here that folks have let's just say not a useful idea about their ability to discard, because there's not the same kind of pressure on the landfills and so forth. But I see Kathy Mirza has her hand up. Kathy, why don't you go ahead and unmute and go? We have a few more minutes.
Sure. Hi, fabulous presentations. Thank you all. I'm interested to hear a little bit more from Julie about the design builds aspect, in the sense of like connecting the dots with a project that's happening and bringing in someone, folks like you to assess the materials and be able to discern what you can capture from that space. Connecting those dots, I would just love to hear a little bit more about that piece.
Unfortunately, this let's see. This project started a little bit. The decons came in a little bit late to have that be the really well designed into even the existing project, or there was a certain amount of time pressure about getting the stuff out when it became clear we could do some deconstruction. So I think we all went in knowing that that was going to be a problem. I mentioned Kelly's platform that she's developed called Orbit, which is a material reuse platform. Kelly, I don't know if you want to jump in and talk about it at all. That was a huge lifesaver for us. But for instance, in the block, we are turning that back into one of our upcoming projects. But the timing is always an issue. We're gonna put some of that block into one of our upcoming projects, and so even if the timing is just perfect, it's like we're still going to need more storage space than we have available. There's still going to be some lags. There's still going to be some just struggle around that timing working out well. I'm not exactly sure if that answers what you were questioning, but it's a real luxury to have all those arms of our company so that we can be pulling, designing with material and building with it.
And I think it's that timing piece, right? Like knowing that it's kind of in the queue and knowing how that platform works would be helpful too.
Yeah.
I can
Thank you.
jump in, or maybe to add on to what Julie said. So I think when we realized the Spark Town Hall, I think we realized that none of the materials that was coming out of the building was being planned for the design of the new building, right? And when we heard that, it became very concerning that no material will be reused at all. So a couple of people stepped up, like co-adaptive being a big one. I think they're really the heroes of making like the fixed material like part of bring it back into the material stream for new materials. And then so we were able to help them find a match with the other architect that Julie was talking about in those 4 music venues. Took about 3 months from what they did, which was great, and we're seen as like a model for other projects. So they posted all the materials that they were going to deconstruct months prior to deconstruction. So we were able to have conversations with different people who were interested, and they were able to sell that material prior to even walking into the building. Because for them, like they're taking the risk of taking that building out and taking the material out. And so to reduce their risk, trying to find people to buy it ahead of time was a big advantage. And then also the glazed blocks are still for sale and they're still on Orbit. And I hope it came through this presentation, but like Co-Adaptive really stepped up, and Stickbulb, who's launching Better Than New as well, are like made that project a success and help show the city that's possible. And they're trying to do better on the next one. Lots of lessons learned there.
Yeah, and that's what it was a wonderful experience in a lot of ways, and so many materials were left in the building, and just like an example of how much better we can do, as we keep getting better, both as harvesters and logistics people and everything else,
Yeah, I would say that that's the same for the loose materials too, as we moved as much as we could, as much as the nonprofits could fund themselves to be able to pick up. But I think knowing how little or how much they can do on such little resources, I think there's a lot more that we could do in the future with better planning, with better coordination, and some funding mechanism.
Folks, it's just closing in on the hour, and I realize we could have dedicated multiple sessions to you guys, and I hope you will come back and that we'll get the opportunity to learn more about various pieces and help make other folks in our community aware of what you've been doing so that we can all join forces even more successfully. This has been a fabulous session. Thank you to all of our presenters, to those who registered, asked questions, and participated. Yes, another folks are saying, folks absolutely want to hear back again. A big piece of the programming and the sessions that we've held over what we call a season from September through June this year was about trying to spotlight success stories, helping people who in this very challenging environment with increased headwinds for anything about sustainability, to make people aware of the progress that continues to be made, kind of to give heart and share where these lights are shining bright. You guys have been an amazing story to bring this season and to go into our summer hiatus. The scope, the scale, what you have done with an all volunteer set of participants is just phenomenal. Thank you. Thank you for what you shared. Magdalena, I'll send you a LinkedIn invitation if you want to get an introduction to Gary and Sika. I'm glad to work that. She's working things in terms of the international building codes. So there's some incredibly cool stuff that everybody's doing together. Unless there's anything else super urgent, I'm afraid we need to bring this to an end. Folks, please take a few moments and respond to the survey that'll come up when you exit. Thank you. And have a wonderful summer. And thank you so much to all of the presenters today. This has been great. Congratulations on the progress you've achieved and the momentum you're building. Wonderful. We're proud of you and we're glad to know about you and support you.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
everybody.
much.
Thanks.
Thank you.